in a long time. I'm happy to see you.
I know. I love your backdrop.
First of all, and this is important, how are you?
I'm doing fine, just plugging along. You know, it's that thing where you just keep plugging every day. I kept thinking all day it's Thursday. So
So what's it like for you to work at home? Like, are you,
okay.
we see.
Dougie. Okay. It's fine. You know what? It's fine. It's, you know, it's that thing you get used to. You get used to it. Is that the hard thing is you're just kind of always working. You know, you're always kind of there because it's right there with you all the time. So
yeah. So is there, it's really difficult because I find that the challenge is to find the balance and to hold to the balance, because it is too easy when it's right there to say, oh, let me check this thing. And of course, we have Gary Marsh to thank for why we have breakdowns coming out, you know, all hours of the day and night, which makes it keeps dragging us back.
I know. And that's the thing. And I had like something right beforehand. It's like, I got C-mail and it's something that's, the person did it months ago. And I'm like, I don't know why it's coming back. It's like, and half the time
I try to yell at him about that. I said, Gary, I remember the old days when we used to get to the office in the morning and there would be the packet like at the door of hard copy. We'd get it done by 10 or 11. It would go out by messenger. And that was it. We'd have a smoke, a drink. We'd go off for the day and have nothing else to do. I long for those days. Not really.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of times you're just hurry. But now it's like you are on call and it's like they just expect, you know, sometimes. So
right. They expect that we are 24/7. So I have something I want to say to you. It's dawned on me. This is a good thing. You know, there are very few agents I know who have been so public with their support for actors and with trying to move the envelope forward for actors. And you have always done that. I mean, for years, and you've been so upfront and proactive and strategic about gathering information about college showcases, you know, and other. I saw the one that came out today about the comedy festival that's going online. So, like, thank you for that. I mean, it's, you know, you've carved out a position as a thought leader for yourself in many ways in the industry.
Well, and I think more and more we all depend on each other for all this stuff. It hit me, you know, yesterday when I saw that the CA big layoff thing. And what happens with all these things after a few months, all of a sudden I get someone, can I get your you know, blah, blah, blah. These eight, because they're not used to doing things on their own.
Right.
And so, you know, and some people are very helpful with information and stuff. So.
Well, thank you for what you do. And what I think is most exciting that I want to specifically talk to you about is the whole college showcase movement, because we have really over the years seen that it's become, it's not a movement, it's an industry, right? The college showcases have become an industry, not just the colleges that are here in LA, but, you know, sophisticated programs that acting programs have at schools, universities, and colleges around the country to bring students to LA and New York and to showcase for us, hoping for, you know, what everybody hopes for is some interest. And that, of course, has now gone away. But I was really intrigued by the virtual showcase idea that you were the guy that kind of spearheaded that. So I wanted to,
with some other people, a group of us were talking. What happened was a group of us were emailing back and forth saying, look, all of a sudden, you know, that mid-March where everything is like, okay, we're canceling this and that. And it's like, you could do these online, you know. And also I had like a personal interest, Marianne Daniels, who was very close to us, who was a man, she loved him. And we were the executors of her estate. She passed away of COVID at the end of March. She was in senior living. We took her, you know, it's like, I wanted to find things in like early on, like to entertain her because she loved them. And so, so there was about a dozen of us. And then all of a sudden we got connected with Gary and that turned
Marsh.
out, and that turned out really well. So there was a lot of people with input, and that I just kind of kept the track of everything.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And I guess like you were one of the agents who was very prolific in the amount of showcases that you
Mhm.
have been attending on a
Right.
regular basis. And I guess sort of it would be helpful to kind of get a take for you. Like, do you, when you go to the showcases, do you frequently come away having been impressed with what you've seen and or sort of ideas of what you might say to the students?
There's times where, yes, there are sometimes you feel that. A lot of times, I think with a lot of the schools, they're just the ones who come here are kind of in awe of being here, or they they are just like, we don't know what we want to do, and a lot of the material. And seriously, I mean, this year was an anomaly because everybody kind of threw it together. But now going further, it's like some of the material that people picked and some of the stuff makes no sense. So doing the same olds, and not really show it because you're showing it online. So it's you get a different kind of feel for the people. So yes, you can see some people that are really good, and then some of them just want to or just want to be there and they don't get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so you feel that too. But I think also what happened the last several years was with the regular life, they're all of them at once, and there's so many, and they weren't building the base of people going. You can see the same people over and over. I can tell you that I don't know the exact figures with the schools that do their online links, but with breakdowns, they're averaging maybe 15 to 1800 views per school.
that's incredible. That's great.
So you do it. You have like 99 seat theater. You have 2 showcases, so you can maximum hit 200 people.
Yeah,
And, and that, and so this way you're seeing a lot more. And I also know because the last one I sent out, because I don't think there will be any others. I don't right now. People are gradually going through them, so they take their time watching. So there's no, I mean, because this year we don't know what's going on. There's no urgency,
yeah,
and a lot of these
yeah,
students who don't live here,
yeah.
and there's not so it's there's not that like, oh my god, I got to sign all these people and meet all these people and hurry, because it's all a little different.
Right. Well, I think what is so interesting, and as it's sort of opening the doors on a global level in a couple of ways. One is there are more. This creates an opportunity for schools to do showcases who could never afford to come here and set up and do showcases. And on the other hand, you're absolutely right. I mean, if we're in a 99 seat theater, there's only so many people we can get
Hmm.
to see, and it's become a struggle to fill those seats with industry
Right.
people.
Well,
But this is a
because
way, you've got agents and casting directors and managers everywhere, anywhere, who can now see that stuff.
right. Well, it's also that thing where sometimes if you're going at lunch, something you're getting there right at 1. If you have to leave at noon, depending on what side of the hill you're on, and by in the evenings, it's just like So it actually makes sense this way, and I think a lot of it. And there's a lot of schools that you just don't pay attention to. I About 30% of these schools I never knew had acting. I've never heard of Elon University in
Yeah.
North Carolina.
And they have
That's
a
a van.
very good program at Elon.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and I know like the New York people. I mean, there's no theater right now, but they're keeping track of all that stuff. A lot of the
Yeah.
people, I've got a lot of response from people just saying, "Hey, thanks," or "Hey, blah blah blah." So it's from all levels, from heads of network casting and studio and film cast, to casting associates and again managers and agents. So I think there's a lot of people that are just like I did sign a few people. I probably would not have gone to 3 of the schools just because.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because the school's reputation often
And also,
precedes, right?
yeah, and also just when they were going to do it, the timing, and it was something else was going on, and
Yeah.
sometimes so it's tough. But this way you can. It's not. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal, but you get a feel. And also with with the breakdown one, the other with the individual school ones is one thing. The breakdown ones I like because you can look at the person and then you can look at the resume right in the
Mhm.
bio. So you can do it while they're watching stuff. You're watching it. So you can just plan it, think that way.
Yeah.
I noticed that with Chapman when they did their regular thing. Chapman usually has a really good program. It was hard to tell because it was like they did these scenes, they were shot, and I know they're all trying. and that, but you had to look up each person later, and like by the time you look, and I would just keep track as I go along because I made an effort to look at all the schools.
Yeah.
You know, some schools there weren't people I needed or wanted, and like I knew they weren't going to be coming out here. So
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of them. I've gone online to the Breakdown platform and seen some of them. And I think, you know, I'm saying I want to teach you the lessons of self-tape so you understand performance for stage theater versus performance for what's being recorded on a camera where we want to see you. We don't want the camera in the back, and we don't want trouble. It's not, you're not shooting a theater piece with one camera and hoping that we're going to be able to see something we're impressed with. That, I think that sort of stirred in me. I want to do a workshop for these colleges on how to record this stuff so we can see it. They need it.
well, they do, and I think, well, like I said, this year is unusual because no one knew what they were doing, and schools kind of came into it later. I know the last couple were like, oh, we heard about this. And I know some schools didn't do it at all because they just are all spread out. Yeah. And people had their own plans, what they were doing, so they tried to adapt it. But a lot of it is personality. I'll tell you, one person I signed is from Missouri State. It just opened because it would just go to the next one. It just opened with him chatting, and it was just energy. Yeah. It wasn't about acting. It was just, and it's that thing where you want to know. Sometimes you can watch these self-tapes, and watching them all now because we have to.
Right.
You see one thing, but you get that feel. You want to get that little bit of pop. It's not always the best actor. It's just who knows how to, you know.
Yeah, I always say it's not the best actor; it's the right actor, right? And that could be for all kinds of reasons. No, it's interesting that you said that. Yeah.
Right, and there was a girl, like one of the girls from once, she did a whole thing where her introduction, and she pulled her parents in, all these other, and it was just crazy. But it was like a minute, but it was like I got her personality.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so you got that. You wanted to get a little bit more than just a scene from, you know, let's say This Is Our Youth or one of these things where you know.
Yeah. I love that. Do you have a sense or sort of any thoughts about, and I've been saying, well, just as soon as I figured out how to get my clients to do all the self-tapes right, now we're doing the virtual live auditions.
Right.
How are you communicating to your clients about how to ace those?
I think with the self-tapes, you watch and you have to just tell them the little tips. Is that thing where one client, and he did it again, where his hands were just right in the front. So your hands are right there, and it takes away from your face.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to. And sometimes it's that thing where you have to have that little bit of energy, a little bit more energy on tape.
Yeah, yeah.
The virtual live ones, I've only had one appointment so far, and they're still trying to figure all that out. Yeah. I think that will be better for certain things in the long run, because it's like, let's say projects that they want to give you notes on, or it's a Marvel project or something secretive. They want to just explain to you more directly. Yeah. That's one thing. And some people are in a vacuum when they're self-taping, and they don't know if they're doing it. You know, they may be doing a great job, but they may not be doing it what they need.
Right. Right. And they can't book the room if they're not in the room, or at least not in the room virtually, right? They don't have a chance to make that connection with a casting
No, and they could do a great job. It's just you need to give some notes to them, and you can't. And look, everybody's kind of working in a vacuum.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he said, why don't you guys give more notes ahead of time instead of just, please, you know, on the physical part of it.
Yeah.
Because we've all had to learn to be more kind of technical.
Yep, for sure. Which is why I look like this at 27, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
I did not have one gray hair on the top of my head in January. I want to be very clear about that. I was talking to Paul Ruddy the other day for one of the conversations for this series, and we were talking about how when he is holding auditions where he's bringing people in, he can see maybe 10 actors in an hour. And now with the self-tapes, for the first sort of vetting, he could see 50 actors in an hour. So it's really the potential there for more of our people to be seen is very exciting.
Well, and also is that the stress of going to some of these locations and parking and trying to figure out where to go. Like in our building, it's Valco Miller, and it's just like people sometimes can find parking and sometimes they can't. And so you're dealing with that whole world too. Yeah. And then running late, and they may, you know, so you're dealing in a different it's a little easier that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think you're right. It's that thing where, yes, it's like zip, zip, zip. And you can tell early on. I noticed this with the self-tape or watching the colleges. There's certain people, they're not for me. Boom. I could just move on.
Yeah.
Some people I watched all the way through just too. But, some of them like, boom, I got it.
Right. But if you're in the room with them, you can't say, stop, get out.
Right.
I'm done. Thank you very much. You have to go through
Hmm.
the process. Yeah. I completely
Yeah.
get that.
But I do know that a lot of people who never went to show, like, oh, and like they weren't getting the information on them. And that's that whole thing. So I know there's a lot of people that were looking this year, like are looking through people as they go along.
Yeah.
I got an email from someone in New York saying that there was a password. Password was, I put a capital and it didn't need to be. So they couldn't, but you could tell they're going through these things.
Mm.
So when I put on the,
Yeah. Yeah. So we just have to we'll have to pay more attention, I guess.
we have to pay more attention, but also you have to realize it's a longer haul and that people don't realize, they don't know what they're looking for or don't know. Don't look if you're not invited. Like with the comedy thing, if people don't know about it, they don't know about it.
Right. So then there's the extra sort of layer of creating an awareness about it first, which, what you are doing is really helpful in getting that awareness out to people who wouldn't otherwise maybe know about it. So, thank you for that.
Well, and there's a lot of people, look, how much you're spending on this education to do, and these schools, some of them just don't train people properly.
Yeah.
They're training us so much stagecraft and this and that, and that's great, but you don't get that practical. Like I look at some of the choices some of these people did, or a couple of schools, they all did the same scenes over and over. They did this, and like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And just say that there are a lot of acting programs that are so focused on theater and methods and systems that don't really apply to the business of acting as we are living it now. So there's almost a relevance lost in a lot of places.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure it's just because that's what the faculty learned, and that's what they're doing, and they've had a few great alumni, and they live on that.
Yeah.
But right now, look, I don't know what's going to happen theater wise.
Yeah.
That's going to be the last area that opens.
Yeah, I heard on NPR earlier today, somewhere in rural England, they're starting up some outside thing that used to be 400 people, but maybe 20 people get to come now. But it's still not the same community experience you want to have when you go to the theater.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't be like all on stage close to each other or like in a dressing room sharing like makeup and all that stuff. It's tricky,
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask you a business question before I let you go, just in terms of prestige, in terms of your agency. Do you have a sense, or have you guys been talking about how things are, well, they are what they are, but how moving forward, how different they will be in terms of like how you guys work? Like, do you think the model of working from home might be something that's more embraced, giving need for less office space or less clients, more clients?
I don't know about less clients, more clients, but it will be less office space. I think I've talked to other agents who like they sign leases for several years and I'm like, you don't need all that. It used to be, there used to be that stigma, oh, they're working from home. And it's like, oh, Fridays I'm working from home. You're barely working. You're just, taking care. And so, but now that's different, and I think people understand that everybody's in the same boat. That's the one, I don't say advantage, but the one underlying factor for everybody. We're all in the same boat,
Well, levels the playing field really for all of
right.
us.
And a lot of these larger, these people, and you do it all online. So it is that thing where just trying to build it up online yourself. Yeah, you still need to be around other people and do other things. And agencies they're gonna have to change the laws because there's like no working from home, all this, offices at home and all that stuff. That's all got to change because it's just, but sometimes you're paying outrageous amounts for office space that you don't need. And I think also over the years, it's that thing where it's nice to have a beautiful office, and I've had some beautiful offices. It doesn't make it easier to work. It's just like, oh, okay.
Right. And it doesn't make you a better or different agent.
Not really, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice. I remember one day, Chris, when we were on Wilshire, all of a sudden I started looking out the window. It was just beautiful. It's like what your view would be. And it's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? You know, so you don't really need that. And I think people and as talent, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. You know, we all get this information and we're all sharing this information. So I think that's what's happening. I think in representation, it's like everybody's sharing and doing stuff. Sometimes it's that kind of spastic, gossipy sort of thing, but there is a lot out there, you know.
Yeah. And
I think
I don't know about you, but we're not having the kind of in-person meetings, even before COVID. I mean, we used to have offices, right, to have meetings. People would come for meetings, and now they don't.
you don't really need to do a lot. I mean, and it just saves that we can zip through this. I can be done instead of driving back to someplace else.
Yeah.
I'm here. And you get it. And yes, there's sometimes we do want to have live things and we'll have groups together and we'll see how that goes. But for right now, you know, yeah, you do lose a little bit when you're all kind of, you know, in the Zoom sort of thing or, you know, but
Yeah.
you gain a lot also. So, and I think with actors, I think it's going to be interesting. Like you were talking about doing your thing in the fall. By then you will have an idea what to do. You know, some of these people that were trying to do the dual screen scenes together. I don't know if you saw, you know,
Yeah.
just some of that doesn't work as well. Sometimes it does. A lot of the musical theater people, I know they're all working from home and doing this stuff, but you need to have a little bit of production value. I think this year everybody gets a pass. You know, next year, no, what you don't. You
Right.
know, and it's like some people, some of the schools didn't have all. They just put it up and they didn't put any information on or resumes on people. And I'm like, when I look at that, I'm like, I'm not going to bother. You know, and I know that it wasn't perfect this year. Because seriously, it was one of those things where once we started, we talked about it, and then we started getting some of the schools directly, and then was like, here's what here's what you can do, and the breakdown thing is not perfect, but at least it's uniform that you can watch, and that some schools want to do their own things separately. That's fine. You know, a couple schools had great. I would never have paid attention to Savannah School of the Arts,
Right.
or whatever it's called, or design. And like I said, Elon or Pace University.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to come out here, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And the truth is, really, we're all trying to figure it out. So, you know, it's not perfection that I think we're seeking.
Right. And I think it's that thing where it'll build up over time. It's that thing where like all these things just kind of gradually grow as they go. I was saying that with the virtual comedy show festivals, it will get bigger as it goes, as people get used to the idea. It's like everything else.
Yeah.
But I think the college virtual thing, I loved it. I mean, I would just go on Saturday morning, just look at a bunch of schools and zip through and just write notes of who I was interested. Like maybe not. Then kind of go back and do call, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like my own individual tastes, you know. Like there's certain people I just didn't make sense to me. Nothing against them, but
right. But that's why we sign who we sign, right? I mean,
right.
You put 10 agents in a room and have them look at the same potential client, and some will respond or none will or one will. It's just all sort of gut instinct.
Right. Well, in some schools it's so much about doing their bows and doing the show. And it's not about the material, and that's hard, you know. And some of the venues here, the theater, you know, they use are not ideal for some of these places. You know, you have no great line of vision at the Matrix at times. You know,
right.
You have those things where, and it's like, you know, I think the Gary Marshall or Falcon was the best because it had the biggest in that, but nothing's perfect. So,
and it's a great start, and you know, it always seems to stir the others. You know, I expect that Casting Frontier and LA Casting, you know, I expect others will step up to the plate in trying to do what they do too.
Maybe, I think so. You know, we brought it up. I didn't mention it to the casting network people, but they kind of are in their own world, and it's commercials. And that's a world where a lot of these people don't get paid attention to. I don't have that many connections. If someone taps into that world, there's a lot of these people, but it's a thing where you only, you know, do so much. And I know that commercials is a whole different thing. And I don't even know if they teach commercial stuff in the schools.
They do.
Okay.
Have you, by the way, have you had any clients who have booked anything that they've had to shoot from home? I had this happen last week. It was a commercial. One of my clients booked it. It was all done virtually live from home.
No.
They shot it from his house and paid him for the space. And I said, oh, well, that's not so bad.
I've had people do ADR from home, but one person went to a space by himself and it was a green screen. The next thing I have is is for SWAT, and they have to quarantine and go to the set, self quarantine for several days after they get tested.
Yeah.
So I haven't had that, but it's that thing where they do teach, and I know that some people, like with a couple of the things, they have to teach you how to use everything.
Yeah. And so they become better hyphenates in
Right.
the process, right? Yeah.
Well, it's also you learn how to do another thing with the makeup and the hair, and that they're going to teach people how to do some of that stuff.
Yeah.
They'll be there like supervising when you do it, but
yeah,
I mean, we'll see what happens.
It's kind of like an internship, sort of in a way.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say just before I let you go is you mentioned an actor going somewhere and having to quarantine. What's so interesting about that is if they, for instance, if they go shoot in Vancouver, right, and there's a 2-week quarantine period, they're paid to be there for those 2 weeks. So there's a little bit of incentive there too, which, I like.
Yeah. And it's that thing where you don't know. I saw this thing. I don't know why. Well, it was an MSNBC show, this food that built America. And it was one of those things I'm like, oh, wonder what they're doing with it, because it's all doc, but they must be doing some reenactments. But it was shooting in Connecticut. If you look at it, it's a breakdown from about 5 o'clock yesterday. There is like 25 states that you have to be quarantined from to go to Connecticut before you shoot.
Right. They've done that. They sort of like built a fence around New Jersey, New York, some in New England. Yeah.
But it was a whole list. I'm like, whoa,
Well, it's good. I like that. I know the client is safe in a hotel room somewhere for a couple of weeks in the Vancouver situation. And we're all getting a little bit more, and why not? It's good.
Yeah. And it's safer. And it's that thing where, but I think for local stuff is like only a few days.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Promise, last question. So when you are looking at this stuff that's been uploaded from schools everywhere, what factor is where they're located and if the student is there and planning to come here or not when you sort of assess that stuff? Is that a big factor?
Other years, it's a much bigger factor. This year, it was a little bit, because you could tell that some people really wanted to be East Coast. You can just tell what they are or what they wanted to do in that background.
Yeah.
But this year, everybody's going on tape anyway, and no one's here. And there's a lot of people who are younger that actually moved back home to their families for a little while. So 2020 was different than 2019. 2019, you didn't want to have that person say, I'm going to move to LA in November, maybe after I do all this other stuff. No.
Yeah.
Because it's like you've lost momentum. This year is different, and maybe that's how it'll be from now on.
Well, that would be great. And I'll share with you, Amanda Richards at Sony Casting, we did an interview for this series too. And she said the same thing. She said, I love that I can see work from actors who don't need to be in LA or New York anymore. She said they can be from anywhere. And then if we book them, well, then we'll worry about getting them to LA, but we can see them.
One person, and there's a bunch of good people there, but the person I signed from Columbia College Chicago, I would never have seen otherwise. Yeah. And because it's Chicago, and they weren't going to probably come out here, and you see these other schools. There's like, if you look at all the schools and where they are, it was Illinois, Urbana, Missouri State, a couple Texan schools, Ball State, Cleveland Playhouse. There was all these people from all over the place doing, and there's some really good people in good schools that you weren't going to catch otherwise.
Right. We otherwise wouldn't have had any exposure to them at all.
Right. It's not all like Juilliard and all that, because who cares? Those people are boring to me. They were. I was watching it. On that. You can't, because I just felt like I was watching the same thing. Yeah. So.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate this. Words of wisdom. We shall heed them. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So you're welcome.
Stay safe, Mark.
You too.
See you soon. Thank you.
Bye.